The views and opinions expressed in this presentation are those of the producer and those appearing in this show and do not necessarily represent the views of DerryCam, the town of Derry, or any of its staff or affiliates. Hi, I'm Anthony Henry. Welcome back to America's Ass. We are on episode 18. School is here. It's been very hot for some reason. There's zero air conditioning at Pinkerton, so everyone's mad. But school's here. We have something to do finally. After a while, summer kind of gets, it's summer, but you get kind of bored with summer, bored with doing nothing. But I'm not doing nothing. I'm doing something. I'm on the show right now. And with me is my guest, Joy Senecal. So she's running for Manchester School Board. Feel free to tell the audience about yourself.
Sure, thank you. Thank you, Anthony, first of all, for having me today. I appreciate
No
you
problem.
taking the time. My name is Joy Senecal. I am a Manchester resident almost my entire life. I'm a single mom. My daughter's 19. She graduated from Memorial High School, as did I, many moons ago. I am a small business owner. I own 2 small businesses in Manchester. And yes, I am very excited to be running for school board. Many people have asked me why I'm running, and I love our city, and I chat with people a lot in my profession as a hairstylist. Been a stylist for 32 years, self-employed for 20, and I love chatting about people and what's going on in their lives. So I hear a lot about what's going on in our city, and I feel that I want to step up and make a change for sure.
Yeah, and I wish you luck on your campaign, first of all.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
And yeah, I'll start with the campaign itself. What's it like running for the first time?
Oh gosh, definitely more than I thought it would be, but I love it because I love networking.
Yeah.
Networking is part of my job. I'm involved in another company in Massachusetts, and I'm a strategic developer, so I network all the time.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love getting to know people, chatting with people, what's going on in their lives. It's what I do for work. As a stylist, I'm doing hair, but also I'm chatting all day long and getting to know people better. So while I'm out campaigning and I'm door knocking, that is my favorite part, is literally talking to the constituents in my ward and really getting to know people. I'm fairly new to our ward. My daughter and I moved from the east side of Manchester over to the west side, Ward 10, where I am, about 8 years ago, bought our house about 3 years ago. So I didn't get to know a lot of people in our area. So now I'm really getting to know our community, and I love it. And I had the blessing of meeting our principal at Parker Varney. He's amazing. Is bringing so much great energy into that school, and I look forward to working with him in the future.
Yeah. And what's the Manchester School Board look like now, right now?
Currently?
Yes.
What is that specifically?
Like, what are the members like? What are they doing? What made you want to run?
Yes. So I've watched a few. I've been to a few school board meetings. I've watched a few online, and I'm going to say that I feel there's always 3 or 4 who are always bringing up great ideas. Unfortunately, from what I see, there's not a lot of meeting in the middle.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So we talked about this earlier. There's not a lot of meeting in the middle, and that's where I want to come in. I don't feel it should be one-sided with. How do I want to say that? One side of if something is brought to the table, there should be a lot of conversation about that and coming to a mutual solution. For instance, we were chatting earlier with the $306 million plan right now.
Which we will talk about.
Yes, we will talk about it. And yes, so we will chat about that. But it's basically a $306 million plan to refurbish some of our schools, build another school. And there were a few members that were opposed to it. And at the end of that meeting, all but one sided with approving it. So that's what I'd like to see, is more diversity on the school board to have more solution.
Yeah. And who are some of the other candidates? Because there's, I believe, 12 wards in Manchester,
Yes.
so you're definitely not the only person running.
Yeah. Camille Craffey. And Brian is also running, and I believe you were going to have them on the show too at
Yes.
some point, which they're amazing.
Brian Cole has been on the
Brian
show
Cole.
before.
Oh, he has. That's
Yes,
wonderful.
he has.
He's amazing.
He is.
He's great energy. He's very knowledgeable on what's going on in the city. I love running with him as well.
Yeah.
Ken Tassie's current school board member. He's a good friend of mine as well. He's great energy. Brings up a lot of amazing concerns.
He was the lone no vote on that plan, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
He was. He was.
Yeah.
Yes. So, yeah, I would like to see that change. I would like to see more of that, even a 50-50 split on the board, to bring more conversation to the table and saying, like, okay, we may not agree, but how are we going to come to a solution?
Yeah.
You know, I think that's important in politics, although I don't always think that school board is politics. It is politics on a smaller scale.
It becomes politics.
Correct. I have learned that for sure.
There's politics in everything. There's politics in a workplace.
Yes.
Politics isn't necessarily government. It's more a social term, I think, like a way that people interact. All these, like, I guess, stories and like negotiations. That's what politics is.
I would agree with you
and
on
it could
that.
be in any group.
I would agree with you.
Workplace, government.
Yes.
Be anywhere.
Yes. And again, in any situation, you need a median to come to a solution.
Yeah.
If you're very strong on one side or the other, you're not going to meet that middle ground and come to a solution that I feel is fair for all. And that's really when I'm a voice of my constituents. I run on that platform. I've always been very transparent in my life. They will have my cell phone number, my email address. There's concern. I want to hear from you. When there's something that's proposed that I need to vote on, I'm going to my constituents. How do you want me to vote? I'm your voice, and that's the way I am running this election, I should say.
Yeah. And I guess we can get right into that $306 million plan you were talking about.
Yes.
Derry's doing something kind of similar, which I'll cover after, but
Yeah.
let's do a deep dive.
Sure.
What is it? What are your thoughts on it?
So what was proposed was a $306 million budget. That is, again, to refurbish some of the schools, build a new elementary, tear down one of our elementary schools, Wilson, and build a new facility. From what my understanding is and from what I've read and from what I've seen, there's not a very clear-cut what are we going to do from day one and what does that look like? There's a lot of, well, we're thinking we're going to do this. This is kind of our plan. But I think part of that opposition, and first of all, I'm not in opposition. I think every building and every school specifically needs to be upgraded. We talked earlier about air conditioning.
Yeah.
Air conditioning is brutal in the schools. Yesterday was 92 degrees in our schools. That is really challenging to learn, to stay focused. It's a severe impact on our teachers. So I do agree that our buildings need to be updated, but I would like to see a very clear-cut agenda before we vote $306 million. And where's that money going to come from? We have a tax cap in Manchester. So are we going to ask our aldermanic board or our mayor to override that tax cap? I know our constituents are probably not going to be in favor of that.
Yeah.
So where is that money going to come from? That was, both Ken and I feel that same way. Where's it coming from?
So Derry has a tax cap on the town side, but one thing that's different between Derry and Manchester is that our school board actually has their own taxation authority because they are not technically a department of the town.
And was that something that was recently voted on, or has that been in?
I'm not sure when it was in place, but it's been in place as long as I've followed them.
Okay.
I think it's been a while. But
Okay.
That's what it's in. How it is in Derry.
Okay.
Stumbling today.
It is not that way in Manchester. They actually proposed that, and it was voted down.
Good.
Yes, and I agree. I feel that any body of, we'll call it politics, or not, or board, or et cetera, needs checks and balances. And whether it's school board, aldermanic board, et cetera, I think there needs to be some checks and balances on that.
Yeah. So what are some other, I guess, key points to that plan?
That is from what I saw and read. That was the overhead. Our superintendent is holding an open forum next Thursday.
Okay.
Invite you to attend if you'd like. And it's going to be a question and a Q&A. I've posted it on social media because I would love everybody. Like, I think this is amazing. One of the things I was talking about earlier with Chrissy, who's alderman in Manchester, and
Former
Camille.
guest of the show.
Yes, she's amazing. Is, how do I say it? Sorry.
Nope. All good.
Yeah, you could repeat the question.
So, what are some other, I guess, points to the plan, I think? Is that what I last said?
Yes, points to the plan. So from what I got, so I'm sorry, we were chatting earlier, I lost my train of thought, I apologize. So yes, so the superintendent is doing an open forum, which again, I would encourage everybody to come to have your voice heard. And you have to write in your questions, and I'm sure certain questions will be, you got to narrow it down. But I think I would love to have that. As a school board member, I'm all about being face-to-face with our constituents. I would love to do some type of town hall style. Be like, hey, because right now when you go to a school board meeting, you can get up and say what you want to say, but there's not that interaction with school board. So you basically state what you want to say, and they're like, okay, thank you so much for coming in. We'll take it under advisement. Or I want to hear, and I want that to be more of an open forum. I think that's where people become more honest, when they feel like their voice is being heard and they're getting an answer.
Yeah. One thing that Derry does in our public forum, we do ours at the end of the meeting, which I suspect is because they don't want to hear the public.
Yes, because there is open, yes, and then there's closed.
Yeah. They do most of theirs open, but they have a lot of closed too. They have theirs at the end of the meeting, which, like I said, I think is to dissuade the public from attending and talking, because they take their time in their meetings. They often go until 10 p.m.
Yes.
And they start at 6:30.
Yes,
so
likewise in Manchester.
But they have a rule, which when I start my post on the school, like my high school post on the school board on Tuesday, I'm going to talk about it at some point. They have a rule during public forum that you can only talk about agenda items. Meaning if you were to say something about, I don't know, something that wasn't on the agenda that night, they'd tell you to stop talking. And they'd tell you to, they like cut your mic. They've done it before.
Yes.
I watched them do it to my friend's dad when he went up to talk, because he had concerns about some, I guess, social artwork, I'll call it, in one of the middle schools. You probably know what I'm talking about.
I do not know, but I can imagine, because
He tried going up to talk about it, and they said, no, email us. It's not on the agenda.
And I feel like that is exactly what happens in Manchester. You feel like you're silenced, so why would I bother even saying anything?
Yeah.
And I want to change that, because how do we come to solutions, or a solution regarding any topic that we're discussing as a school board? Who are we representing? Our constituents. So we need to be voting for what our constituents want, not what I want personally, what my constituents want. They're the ones who are voting me in, and they're the ones who I am representing. And I think that's most important. When any political position, you got to remember who you are representing. And it's not necessarily what I want, it's who I'm speaking for.
Yep. And when Derry had their school board elections back in March, I attended the candidate forum, and I asked a question. I'll ask you that question. What are you going to do to get national politics out of the public school system? And that goes for the schools itself, and it goes for the school board.
Well, one of the things I would love, and this is the first part of the agenda, and I don't know that I'll ever see it happen, is I will tell you the number one issue people have with our Manchester public schools. It's not the current, schools and disrepair. It's our curriculum. The number one reason families are leaving Manchester and going to charter schools or private is our curriculum, our failing grades, etc. And so again, I think it's great that we want to refurbish our schools, but let's talk about, quote unquote, the elephant in the room, which is the curriculum.
Yeah.
So until we revise that curriculum, which then we could say, listen, in that curriculum, this is what we don't talk about. I want to get back to, okay, reading, writing, arithmetic, that's what the focus should be on in our schools. I don't think teachers should bring in anything other than that or any personal opinion on anything.
Yes. And when I asked that question, the candidates I was rooting for gave very similar answers.
I'm sure.
And they didn't win because of the unions that were supporting the more liberal, frankly, candidates. Because whether we like it or not, school board is nationalized. That's why I asked the question.
Yes.
I didn't do it to, you know, ask them per se. I wanted to try to out them, all of them,
Correct.
for what their affiliation actually was, so that the public would see it. Because I knew that their answers, no matter what they may be, will tilt them in one column or the other. So it was when I did that, it was strategic, and it ended up working because people realized that those candidates were either party, and it ended up being that the three liberals won, and our school board is very not well liked, which I will get into soon. And yeah, we need that change in Manchester because
100%.
there's students at Pinkerton from Manchester, and their parents are paying that tuition because
Correct.
if you're not from one of the 6 sending towns, you got to pay tuition.
Right.
So
And I was just speaking with another business owner in Manchester, and I asked him, I said, oh, where do you live in Manchester, blah, blah, blah. He goes, well, I used to live, I moved. I go, where'd you move? He said, Hooksett. So let me ask you, what was the #1 reason? He said, schools. And I said, interesting. Okay. And he said, he goes, I was either going to, you know, pay for private tuition or I was going to spend a little bit more in taxes, and now my son can go to Pinkerton. And I don't like hearing that. I want to bring in new, amazing families into our city. And if the #1 reason families are not coming into our city and choosing to go to Hooksett, Derry, Goffstown, et cetera, is because of our school system or educational platform, we need to change that.
yeah.
That's the #1 thing we should be focused on right now.
Yeah, and Pinkerton has been one of the top high schools in the nation, and I think that's largely because it's a private school. It's not run by the district. It's semi-private, I should say, because they have deals with all the sending towns, but it's not part of the school district. The school
Okay.
board has zero authority over Pinkerton.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
our school board only has authority over K through 8,
Okay.
so the elementary and middle schools.
Okay. That's interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess I'll go into the Derry School Board now. We have 7 school board members. They're all at large. We don't have wards for the school board.
Okay.
We have districts on the town council, but not school board.
Okay.
And yeah, we've had, most of them are relatively new. I think there's only one of them that's been on more than a few years, and she's been on for decades. But after that, the newest person's only been on for 3 years. Well, I should
Is it a
say
2-year
oldest,
term or is it a
oldest.
4? Okay.
3-year
The
terms.
3-year term. Okay.
We have 3-year terms in Derry for
Okay.
council and school board.
Okay.
And yeah, they've been not well liked over the past few years. We've had COVID issues, for example. I'm sure we could get into some of what Manchester had.
Oh, goodness.
But Derry was masked until February of 2022. And I remember, and I talked about this last episode, but I'll mention it again. I had to go up during public forum, and I waited the whole time. And I basically accused them of corruption because a teacher said something not so nice to a student about having their mask down. And I didn't say the teacher's name, but I basically said to the school board in public, hey, this happened under your watch. You guys are abusing kids for masks. They repealed the mandate 4 days later.
Good.
And
Good.
one of my proudest accomplishments
Good.
in politics.
Right.
So there's that. There's the controversy with the schools now.
Right.
So we have 5 elementary schools: Derry Village, East Derry, South Range, Barca, Grinnell. And we lost student population on the elementary side. So they decided to close one. And I believe a month or 2 back, they decided on Derry Village. It will close at the end of this school year. But last meeting, out of nowhere, they're like, hey, we think we might want to close South Range too, despite the fact that they said the meeting before, we're not going to close it. And now they're saying they want to make South Range a public park so that it stays within the community. Because South Range is really unique. I went to South Range, so I know. It's really in the middle of a residential neighborhood.
Right. So where are those students going to be? Are they going to be bused to a different location?
So-
Are they mostly walking students there?
It's mostly walking students there.
So now we're looking at transportation, what's
Yeah.
going to happen.
Yeah, and the reason they decided to close Derry Village, and I wasn't exactly for closing one, but I guess Derry Village was the best option. They decided on that one because it was in the middle of town. So it would be easiest to spread the students around.
Okay.
But if we're going to close one that's almost all residential,
Right.
then really makes no sense.
And that's the same with Manchester. Wilson is literally the heart of the city.
Yeah.
And that's even when we talk about like why I could not stand behind this until there was more information is they're not quite sure. They think they're going to send them to 2 different schools. But now these kids that primarily walk, they're going to have to be bused. And as we chatted earlier about what was going on with current busing situation in Manchester, I don't know that we can add that.
Yeah.
We already have 2 busing companies that we are partnering with, and I feel like they're maxed out. So there are a lot of moving pieces to the puzzle before we can agree on it.
Yeah. And with closing, those probably going to be 2. They haven't voted on closing South Range, but they really alluded to it last meeting. Next meeting is going to be Tuesday, September 12th. That'll be my first meeting on the board, so I'll be there. I expect public outcry. I hope you go if you're in Derry. They want to build a new school to replace these 2 schools, and it's going to cost about $100 million, and they want to refurbish the remaining schools as well, just like what Manchester's doing.
And who's paying for that?
Well, because we have the schools have taxing authority. They're going to place it on the taxpayers, but they're going to put it on a warrant article, which means that the citizens get to vote.
Good.
In the end. And I'm not 100% sure on this, but I heard somewhere that they need 66% of the vote, which is 2/3.
Okay.
So I don't expect it to pass.
Yeah.
I don't think this town is going to voluntarily have their taxes raised for something they don't even want.
Correct.
But you never know. Like I said, the voters in this town can be really iffy when it comes to schools. We have a very unpopular school board that seems to be really good at getting reelected. And similar to Manchester, we have one member that really holds out on all the votes and stands up for the people, and she's been on for a long time, and the others are brand new, and they're thinking they're doing good, but they're not.
Right. Yeah, again, doing good is being the voice for your constituents.
Yeah.
Not voting what you want personally.
Yeah.
Again,
Exactly.
I'm not running because I need a 3rd or 4th job. I'm doing this because I love my city. I love our kids. I want more amazing families to come to Manchester. I want them to be excited about coming to Manchester and being in our school system.
Yeah.
So we need to do what is best for our kids, our students, our teachers. I want our teachers to have a voice and feel like they can have a voice without any repercussions.
Yeah.
That's important.
And I think all local politics should be nonpartisan. You may notice that, like most shows, we talk about national politics before. We decided not to do that for this one, not only as an experiment to see how it would go, but to send a message that schools should not have politics.
Amen.
Yeah. So
Yes.
we're almost out of time. We got a few minutes left, but we might as well wrap up early. So do you have any closing statements to give?
No, I want to thank you so much. This has been amazing. And I just love, great conversation. And we want to do what's best for our towns and our city and to be a strong voice for them. And I think it's, amazing that you have this platform. You're bringing in so many great guests that are going to hopefully open up people's eyes to what's going on in our town and cities and get out them to vote. And I always say that is the one thing, unless you're going to actually step up and be part of council, school board, alderman, etc., only other thing you can do is vote. And getting out in the primary and voting, as well as your major election, is so important. That's the only way you can get your voice to be heard.
What is the day of your election?
I have one opponent, so I am not in the primary. I am in the general election in November 8th.
Okay. So if you're in Ward 10, make sure you vote. If you're in Derry, go see me at my first meeting, September 12th, Tuesday, 6:30. third floor of Town Hall. I'll be there. I hope to see you there too. I'm Anthony Henry. This has been America's Ass. Thank you for watching.